whatever you want to say about it.
Okay. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted by the United States government. I did not enlist, but I was classified as 3C, which was that you deferred for the time being. When 1A, you were taken into service right away. When we all signed up for the draft, we were all classified and given numbers, and whatever number you had, whatever they got picking your number, that's the time you went into the service.
So do you remember when you were drafted?
I think it was July 13, 1942, but just before that, on June the 7th of 1942, I happened to get married, and 3 weeks later, the government said, we need you, so at the time I was drafted and I went to Fort Dix to get all my clothes and everything else. And from there, Fort Dix, they put us on the train, and while we were going on the train, we were trying to find out where we were going, and we tried to bribe the people that were running the train, but none of them would say anything where we were going. And 3 days later, we stopped in a town. When we got off the train, there was the sign, Brags, and we say population 500. And here we are, a whole train full of soldiers going into a little town of 500. So you can imagine how we felt about it.
Oklahoma.
Did you have any say in what branch of the service you were in, or?
No, we were just, we happened to go into a brand new camp. It was just started. It's in Bragg's, Oklahoma. The camp was just maybe started 2 or 3 days before I got there. In fact, when I went into the barracks, I was about the 6th man in the barracks. But something really hit me with it. There was one fellow that was sitting by the corner by himself, and he already had 2 medals. And he had a little grayish hair, and I'm saying to myself, I'm over here, just only 5 of us, and here's the guy who's already got medals. How the heck did he get these medals? And I later really found out that he was in the First World War, and he happened to be in the category of 18 to 38, and he wasn't married or anything, so that's how come he got drafted too. But later on, they discharged him because he was too old.
Okay. So you went to boot camp?
Well, yes, they call it boot camp. That's for the Navy, but we were what we call infantry drilling camp, and we were there.
So what was that like? Very rigorous?
Well, like I told you, we were the first one. I happened to be the first ones in there, and every so on and often we were getting new recruits. And as we were getting new recruits, we were getting equipment, we were getting stuff that they didn't have in the camp at all. In fact, we only had cold water. We had to wash our underwear and things with cold water, no hot water or anything. Then after we got our ammunition, there were what they call cosmoline and grease and everything else. We had to clean them out. And everything was really starting something different, something new that I've never done before, but it was an experience.
So do you remember any of your instructors that you had there?
Well, none of my first instructors, because they have what they call, the first instructors were what they call the cavalry. They came from North Carolina, and they were the first ones there to teach us what we have to do. So none of them were later on. They were separated too from us, and they went to different camps.
Which war did you serve in?
What do you think?
Which war did you serve in?
In the Second World War.
Second World War. And where exactly did you go when you were serving?
When we left the States, I left from Newport News, Virginia, on a ship what they used to call the Empress of Scotland, which was, of course, a Japanese ship that they used to go to Japan and the United States, but they changed the name to Empress of Scotland. And we were by ourselves. We were about 6,000 of us in the ship. And the funny part of it is, when we were on a boat for about 2 days out, it was run by the English people, and they wanted us to learn how to fire the guns on a ship that none of us ever knew about. And 3 days when they were firing, I said to myself, why do they want to fire? The Germans are liable to hear us and they're liable to come after us. And we didn't have no escort. We went straight from Newport News, Virginia to Casablanca in about 4 days.
Do you remember what it was like when you arrived there?
Yes. I don't know if you know about pictures years ago that we used to see movies of Casablanca. Everybody was one of these hats, short sleeves, short pants. And when we received on Christmas Day in 1943, it was ice cold, freezing. And we went into an area where they had us all sleep in tents. I had all my clothes on and still was freezing. So it was an experience that I never expected. I always thought Casablanca was very warm, but it was freezing.
What was a typical day like there?
What?
What was a typical day like? Like, what did you do every day?
No, over there, all we did was just sit around for about 2 days, and then we went on to what they call a 40th train, where all of us were packed in one little car, and with a lister bag, what they call the water bag, went there. And it took us from where we were in Casablanca to all the way up in Africa, in a place where it was a staging area where we was going to start learning how to maneuver and how to learn how to fight the enemy.
And where was the first place that you saw actual combat?
Well, before that, we were in Casablanca and Oran. Now, we were supposed to leave any area, staging area, where we were learning how to maneuver. I was fortunate enough to be in Oran, and I was out for the day, what they call a day, off. I was sitting on the curb waiting for a bus, and there in the distance, there were 3 soldiers walking by, and I thought I noticed one of them was my old friend when I was a child, that he had come into the service before I did. And I looked at him, and we had a signal, which was a whistle, which went something like this. And the 3 boys that were walking, one stopped dead. Looked around and everything else, and they were in very nice condition. They were really happy, and they must have been drinking a little bit. And there he stood still, and he looked around, and I was still a little further distant from him, so he couldn't see me. And then he started walking again, and again a little whistle. Again he stopped dead. Then I got up, and he saw me, I saw him. We started running to each other, grabbed each other, kissed each other, and everything else. For that whole night long, we're going back and forth. He was in one area, I was in another area, all night long. He's coming to the States, and I'm going into battle. So it was really something that is a memory that I can never forget. And I was telling him when he goes home to tell my parents and my wife that I'm okay. And then we departed. Well, I went, that following morning, I went in Italy. In Naples. I landed in Naples, and I went back into my outfit.
And is Italy, that's actually where you saw fighting?
No, we just started, we went into the area. They were already there before I got there. And we took over the English troops area at battle. And that was the first time that I started seeing battle, which we didn't have too much activity because it was still cold. But we started what they call getting ready for the push-off, as they called it, which I think it was May 11th of that year.
Okay. Were there a lot of casualties in your unit?
The what?
Casualties? Did you lose a lot of men?
At the beginning, no. But when we were on an area where we were doing what they called extra stuff than what we were trained for. We were going around supplying the troops with food, and we were laying telephone wires and things like that. And the first casualty was when one of the men was walking, he tripped on a wire, and he was tripped on a hand grenade. And he was the first one that was wounded in my company. And when he came back, we were asking how he felt, and he had, oh, not too bad, but he could hardly walk because it was in his rear that he got hit.
So were you ever a prisoner of war?
No. Oh, prisoner of war. Well, that was a little later on during the battle. I happened to be fortunate enough to be in an area where the Germans were getting short of men, and they were bringing up men from the rear, which were very old and very young. And we happened to have to capture about 16 of them. And I had the privilege, my captain gave me the privilege of taking these prisoners. We had 2 wounded ones. We made provisions to carry the wounded with make-believe stretchers. And I had an officer, and I was told not to let the officer in talk with the men because they're liable to do with something that we wouldn't need it. But the funny part of it was I and 4 other GIs, I had all rifles and guns, but none of them would work, and we had to go back and get new ones. But the Germans never knew that we didn't have no guns. We finally were told to bring them back to headquarters. And when we got, well, I was going down a ravine that we passed about a couple days ago, 3-4 days ago. One of my men saw people moving in this town that we went by. There was nobody there when we went by about 3-4 days ago. And as we were going down and going up in the ravine and coming up on the main road, there was a new outfit coming in to replace us. And the major said, where are you from? So I told him where we were from, but I said, you better be careful. I think we saw some people there. So he asked me where. I said, no, tell him the town. So we went over, and we were going around a mountain, and all of a sudden I started hearing fireworks. And they were really having a scrimmage. And here I saw ambulance coming off. And I was, when the ambulance was coming back with the wounded, I said, what happened? He said, oh, over there by the ravine there's a little town. He said they had German soldiers there, and they were waiting for this GI that were going by, and that's when they started battle. So I was lucky that we passed that by with no harm.
Throughout your service, were you awarded any medals or citations?
They were awarded after, the first citation I got was after I got wounded. It was in Africa, in Italy. I was given the Purple Heart while I was in the hospital. But the other medals I got when I got discharged was about 4 or 5 of them. I forgot how many there were. And that's the way the medals were given out.
Okay. And how and when were you injured?
Injured? Well, I was wounded in October, and I got discharged in October the following year. So it was on and off. I used to go to the hospital, come home. They used to let me go home and for furloughs to recuperate and everything else. Because within that year, that was what took my time in the hospital. But on and off, it was okay. Some operations I had afterwards, and that was the thing of it. And I was discharged with disability.
How were you wounded, and how exactly were you wounded?
Well, I was in an area where I did reconnaissance before the night, and happened to be the place where the Jerrys were shelling us with the 88. And I had there my squad, and 2 squads of us were there, and they started shelling us, and in the building, 4 of us was a little seriously wounded, and about 9 of them, which was slightly wounded. 4 of us happened to get into an ambulance and go back to the hospital. One of the boys I know that was in the hospital in Atlantic City lost his leg. Another one that wasn't with us, he had wounds in his stomach, and another one that had wounds in his knees. So as far as that's concerned, that was the only thing that I remember when we got wounded.
Okay. How did you keep in touch with your family while you were at war?
We had what they call a V-mail. We used to write it on a letter, and the thing that they used to, they censored, where the officers would censor our letters, and they scratch off what they didn't want us to write, and that's the way we used to communicate with our family. We had what they call a V-mail.
And what was the food like while you were at war?
We had what they called K-ration. There was a breakfast box, there was a lunch box, and there was a supper box. And they had food in there, cigarettes and candy. And the food was good. After all, when you carry your own food, you like what you have, so you might as well enjoy what you have.
Did you have a lot of supplies, or were you short anything?
No, we've always kept with pretty good supplies. They kept us pretty well fed with food. They used to send it to us.
Was there anything that you did for good luck while you were there?
No, I wasn't, what would you call it, superstitious of anything kind, so I never had anything saying good luck or no good luck or something.
Did you notice anyone around you that did anything like that, or no?
Not to my knowledge.
No? Okay. How did you entertain yourself? How did you keep busy?
During a battle, you mean?
Yeah, like what did you do on your free time to have fun with
Nothing
your
very
friends?
much.
No?
That say have fun, no.
No?
Nothing was outside of, just joking around with when we had some free time.
Yeah. What did you do when you were on leave?
Well, that was the best part of it, because they always go home and start meeting all the family and all the friends, and we really enjoyed ourselves at that time. So when you think of it, being in the service and coming home, no matter how much time you have, you always enjoyed it the best you can. Because if they sent you back again, you didn't know whether you'd be able to come back and see the same people or enjoy the same thing. So it was really nice going back home, meeting people.
How often were you able to take leave to go see your family?
When we first started, we used to maybe about only the time of the holidays, like Christmas or some holidays, or if it was, well, you didn't have that much time to come home. But when I was in the hospital, they used to give me several weeks at a time to come home and recuperate, just to be with the family. But it was very nice to do things that the way they had things set up for us was very good idea.
And you said while you were in the service you traveled to Italy. Was there anywhere else? You said while you were in the service you traveled to Italy. Was there?
I was only in Italy.
Only in Italy?
I was only in Italy.
Okay. And do you remember any happy times at war, or any time that you were happy?
Not anything happy, but let's say survival.
Yes.
That's the only thing. There was nothing, to be happy about, as long as you were alive to do what you had to do.
Right. And do you have a lot of photographs from the war?
We weren't allowed to have cameras or anything else like that, but some of the people were fortunate enough to have cameras, and they took pictures. And some of the pictures that they took, they gave me some of them for our time, so that's the only time the pictures I've had. And even in camps, they wouldn't allow us to have cameras because they were afraid that, the enemy would find out who we are, what we're doing, and everything else like that. So I never had the fortune of having a camera of my own to have pictures that I could bring back and say that, that what I seen or doing had done.
But you have a few photographs from
wartime.
wartime.
Yes, some of my friends have sent me photographs.
Yeah. And we'll look at those at the end of the interview. What did you think of the officers or other fellow soldiers?
I was very fortunate enough to have very, very good friends, soldiers. I was fortunate enough to have very, very good officers, and some of them have been, one of my officers, he was captured, and he came back, and to our reunion of our division, we also communicated with each other, and we've also seen each other with our divisional outfit where we had convention. We still were very, very good friends, and still are.
Did you keep a diary while you were away? Or like a journal?
No,
No?
no.
Okay. Now I have some questions for after your service. Do you remember exactly when your service ended?
October the 14th, 1945.
And where were you still in?
I was in Atlantic City. They were using the hotels as hospitals and what we called rehabilitation buildings. And it was very, very nice to be there. We had the boardwalk to walk around and everything else, and it was a real nice area that they had us in for as far as the hospital was concerned.
What did you do after you were out of the service?
Well, what they had, what they call the GI Bill, we were allowed to have education. And I happened to apply to see when I was qualified, being that I was wounded, and I couldn't go back on my job because I wasn't able to do the job that I had. And I went to see if I could rehabilitate, and they gave me what we call an examination to see what I'm qualified. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I was qualified was to be an interior decorator. But in being in my condition, when I come out of the service, I still had crutches and cane, so I wasn't able to be an interior decorator. And I asked them if I could see if they have qualified for something else. When they gave me examination, they found out that I was mechanically inclined, and so happened that Boulevard Watch Company in Queens had what they call rehabilitation training for any GI that wanted to come to learn to be watchmakers. And I had the opportunity to go to the Boulevard Watchmaking School for almost 2 years. When I came out, I had to take a test in Washington, D.C., what they call the Horologist Institute of America, and I was qualified to become what they call a certified watchmaker. And I went into business by myself, and it was really tough because they didn't have enough money, and I was on a shoestring, and being I didn't know too much of the business, I was in it for about 5 years, and then I had to go and look because I had a family now, and I had to go and look for a job, and the first job I got was in Sikorsky Aircraft making helicopters. But the job where I had to stand up to look too many times on a job, and my leg was very bothered me, so I went to look for a job sitting down, and I went to what they call Northern Kite, which they were making what they called the bomb sights for the airplanes. And I worked there for a year and a half or so, and they sold the company out. Then I was fortunate enough to go find a job in Perkin-Elmer where they made secret things. And after that, I got a job at AFCO helicopter place. And from that on, I retired from there after 10 years.
So you spoke a little bit before about your friendships that you had in the service. You said you made a lot of close friends while you were there,
Yes,
that you stayed in touch with.
I still have these close friends. We have about 4 or 5 of them right now that I have in touch with, and we've seen each other every year when we used to have our reunion, divisional reunion, for a whole weekend around Labor Day. We went to all different parts of the United States. We had our convention. It was very, very nice to be associated with them and still be associated with their wives and their families.
So did you join an actual veterans organization? That was the organization?
The 88 Association, which we named as the Blue Devils, as you can see the emblem that I have here.
Okay, and you already spoke about what you did for your career after the war. Did your military experience influence your thinking about war or the military in general? Like, did you have a different perspective on the military after your service?
No, I had very grandchildren and Korean grandchildren that always wanted to find out, but I couldn't tell them very much because I couldn't explain to them what the war was like, because if you're not in the war, you can't explain it to people to make them understand what a horrible thing it is to be in war.
So you said your veterans organization has reunions
Every year.
every year, and what do you do at the reunions? Just visit with everyone?
Well, you get whoever belongs to the organization for about 3 days, 4 days. They have the reunion around Labor Day. So there you get to meet your friends and everything else, and down the Windmill down where I used to have. We used to be about 20 of us. We're down to 5 now. So it's getting so that even now we would not being able to go to the reunion because we have a couple of ailments here and there, every one of us. So now we haven't gone to a reunion for the last 2 years, but we still get in touch with each other by phone and talk and everything else.
That's nice. How did your service and experience with the war affect your life?
How did what?
How did your service in the war affect your life or your thinking about life?
That's a very, very difficult question to answer.
Yeah, I'm sure it affected it in many ways.
Because there's nothing that I could say to help anybody. Only thing is to say that war is terrible, and I wouldn't want to see any of my children, grandchildren, or great-grandchildren go into the experience that I had to go through. I hope they never have to go through what I went through.
Is there anything else that you wanted to add to the interview that we didn't cover? Any experiences, memories?
No, I'm glad that you asked me, which I never thought I'd have the opportunity to be such a, what would you call it now, celebrity. I want to thank you for having me to talk to you. I'm sure you must have other people that you could have done that by picking me for one of your questionnaires and things like that. I'm very, very happy about it, and I hope you will be able to help your friends and everything else with this interview.
Well, I want to thank you too. I learned a lot today.
Very, very welcome. I want to thank you for picking me.
Oh,
you're very, very nice and very, very sweet.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
After the interview, we sat down and looked at some memorabilia from the war. The big picture and the two smaller pictures are pictures that were taken while he was still in the States. I think one's of him and his brother and him and his wife. Next is a picture taken right before he left to go overseas. It was taken in Texas, and it's a picture of all the men that went overseas with him, and it was his company. These two pages here are pictures while he was overseas. This right here is a book of the V-mails we were talking about in the interview. And something interesting that I learned is that they were censored before they were actually sent. A lot of these are mail that he sent to his wife, and there's a cute little Valentine. And this is actually what I found very, very interesting in the whole, we actually talked about it after the interview when he was wounded. This was in his pocket over his heart, and it actually protected him from getting injured from shrapnel from a shell that broke. And actually you could see where it went through and destroyed the pages. And these are medals that he earned while at war. There's a Purple Heart, and this one says for American Campaign. This one is a European, African, Middle Eastern campaign. This one is the World War II medal, and the other one is the Efficiency, Honor, and Fidelity. And that, of course, is the Purple Heart. Very, very impressive. And there's also some pictures right here of the reunions that he was telling us about, where all the men would get together and bring their wives. So that's interesting. Another thing we wanted to show is his 88th Division emblem, which he's wearing around his neck right now. And once again, I just wanted to thank you for your time and for sharing all of your stories about World War II.
It was a pleasure and an honor to have you ask me all these questions, and I hope it helps you and your friends throughout life that what the war was really like. Thank you very much for having me being a celebrity.
Thank you.